Insects, one of the most diverse and numerous lineages on Earth. Present on every continent and making up close to 3/4 of all species, insects are largely underrepresented in academic study and conservation initiatives, despite providing vital ecosystem services that support the growing human population. We are yet to grasp the true range of insect diversity, and we've likely only described an extremely small proportion of the estimated number of species. Some groups receive more focus than others. For example, the eusocial insects, the bees, ants, and termites, and study of their complex social structures. Some insects have great importance to science due to their short lifespans and fast rate of reproduction, such as Drosophila species. However, due to their huge diversity, few insects have received much focused study, even those that we have been aware of for many years. Many recent studies are showing declines in populations of some insect species. One of these that caught the attention of the public was bees. If we look at Google Trends, we can see that searches for colony collapse peaked in 2007, shortly after a number of papers were released showing a shocking and abrupt decline in the number of farmed honeybees in North America and some European countries. Due to the cultural and economic importance of honeybees, this led to a lot of panic about the bee-apocalypse, with much of the news media stoking the fire. We still don't fully understand the reasons for colony collapse disorder, but media catastrophizing in 2007 led to public panic about things like genetically modified crops, though there was little evidence to support that these were a cause. Pressure on some governments led to bans on neonicotinoid pesticides, with the European Union banning 3 neonics in 2018, despite populations being stable in areas like Australia where neonics were widely used. This bee-apocalypse created a small economy around the sale of pre-made bug hotels, packets of bee-friendly wildflower seeds, and an increase in amateur beekeepers. Not only were many of these seed mixes full of non-native plant species, the huge increase in amateur beekeepers in places like London meant that in 2012, the London Beekeepers Association warned that there were likely too many bees to sustain their hives that year due to a lack of nectar-rich flowers. The extremely efficient pollen collecting capabilities of honeybees means that they are good at outcompeting other pollinators and bee species, and that's a real risk, along with the spread of diseases and parasites in areas where beekeeping is on the rise. Since the bee-apocalypse, there has been regular panic in the media and public about the plight of insects in general, with a number of studies on insect declines receiving a lot of attention and not always being reported accurately in the media. One of the main problems in reporting these emotive headlines is we don't do enough research on insects to be able to say there's a global decline. Not only do the general public not care about insects that aren't charismatic or economically important, lots of people dislike most insects, and this is mirrored in academic study. Insects make up a huge proportion of all species on Earth, but are far less likely to be studied, with 70% of studies published in academic journals being on vertebrates, particularly charismatic ones. However, it's fact that we humans rely on the ecosystem services provided by insects in order to thrive, and the loss of species may directly harm us. But is this necessary hype? If we focus on the studies cited underneath these headlines, we can see that, although concerning, often they don't reflect what is reported in the media. Take the Guardian's article, for instance. This is based on a study by Holman et al. That focused on nature reserves in Germany using malaise traps. When you look more closely at this paper, it's apparent that the evidence is only applicable to this area in Germany, and also their data is from biomass, and some sites were only surveyed once. This means we don't know A, what species were affected, and B, whether the decrease was the same in each area. It wasn't a bad study, yet we have these headlines sowing panic about the coming insect apocalypse. The results are worrying, and we should be concerned. However, we need a more concerted effort in data gathering in order to fully understand the mechanisms of these declines and identification of the species which need help. The Guardian again here cites a review by Sanchez Bayo and Wikis, reporting an 80% decline in insect biomass in the last 30 years. This was a global review, and the results are very shocking at first glance. Not reported in the Guardian article, however, is the methodology of the review. Pulling data only from papers containing the words insect decline will have led to a bias in the results, and a critical response from researchers in Finland asserts the paper's potential to compromise the credibility of conservation science. To reiterate, the authors specifically went looking for evidence of decline and ignored reports of increases or populations that were stable when conducting their review of the literature. Despite these issues, the review was also reported in the National Geographic. Let's be clear, lots of studies coming out now are showing declines in insect species. We need to be concerned about these studies. However, the hysteria whipped up by emotive news stories can backfire, particularly when they conclude things the evidence just doesn't support, causing issues like giving ammunition to opportunistic deniers, where people or organisations have vested interests in suppressing data about things like climate change or species extinctions, or causing compassion fatigue in the wider public. The issue of opportunistic deniers is illustrated here by a response from the Global Warming Policy Foundation to a study on insect declines in the Luquillo rainforest in Puerto Rico. The study by Lister and Garcia in 2018 showed a huge decline since the 1970s in not only arthropods, but the species of birds, bats, and lizards which feed on them. The authors argued that this was due to climate change with a 2-degree increase in maximum temperature. Again, this received a lot of attention in the press, with some articles overstating the nevertheless extremely worrying results of the research. It also received a response by Willig et al., asserting that food webs are actually not collapsing in the Luquillo rainforest. They argue that Lister and Garcia failed to take into account the effects of numerous hurricanes, as well as issues with adjustment of data in line with differing sampling effort over the years. This criticism, which did receive a response from Lister and Garcia, as well as the way the media picked up the story, drew the attention of the Global Warming Policy Foundation, writing a number of scathing articles attacking the authors' methodology, disregarding their results, and calling for the paper to be retracted. The GWPF are a government lobby group which can be characterised as climate change skeptics that were ruled by the Charity Commission in 2014 as having broken impartiality rules due to its reporting on climate change. In the case report by the Charity Commission, it was found that the website could not be regarded as a comprehensive and structured educational resource sufficient to demonstrate public benefit. However, articles by the GWPF are reported on often in the media as being unbiased, factual, and educational, and this can have a damaging effect on public understanding of ecological issues, particularly those pertaining to climate change. The fact remains that we really should be worried about insect declines. There are numerous studies showing real declines and sometimes losses of entire species, but the data is patchy, and insect species are so diverse, with the vast majority being unknown, that it is difficult to grasp the complexity of the situation. Fortunately, the diversity of insects probably means that losing them entirely is extremely unlikely, with some of the more generalist species actually being on the increase. There shouldn't be any reason to relax, though. We've been aware of a number of declining species for decades, and we know for sure that we, through habitat destruction, agriculture, and anthropogenic climate change, are having a major impact on every part of the planet, and this affects all of the species inhabiting it. We should be most concerned with how little we truly know about insects. We need concerted efforts to identify and conserve as many insect species as possible. Citizen science projects, things like the Big Butterfly Count, may go a long way to assist with these efforts, as well as getting the general public more involved with and appreciative of the insect species that surround them. As anthropogenic activity is affecting the entire planet, we can assume that insects are under similar pressures from us almost everywhere. Pesticides affect insects in Africa or Asia in exactly the same way that they do in Europe or the US, so we know that reduction in activities or use of compounds that are known to be harmful to insects will be a positive change wherever it happens. We know that reducing greenhouse gas emissions and slowing climate change will go a long way to reduce harmful effects on ecosystems and the species that inhabit them. We have the tools to deal with cases of local insect decline right now, and we need to be putting them to use at the same time as gathering data on the millions of still undescribed species. and we need to keep it up. The problem with the media fear-mongering on insect declines is it's exhausting and encourages feelings of hopelessness when really these studies should be spurring us on to do more to prevent these losses. We need to further our understanding of the myriad ways in which we affect ecosystems, alongside reporting of these issues accurately and encouraging public participation in order to change attitudes towards lesser known and undervalued species. Insects are not only integral to human well-being, but also to the proper functioning of ecosystems everywhere, and this is why it's so hugely important to act now for ourselves and for the planet.